Good morning. How are you doing today, Billy?
Fine, thanks, Arrow. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. I am fascinated with what you're doing here because I'm here in the South, and Jerry Falwell was a huge part and still is a huge part of the South. I mean, this is the Bible Belt. So for you to bring this story forward, we were talking about it, but it was underneath our breath because we were afraid of offending people.
Well, I'm not. But, I should say, and I want to make this clear from the jump, that this is not a documentary about Christians and Christianity.
Right.
This is a documentary about people who exploit Christians and Christianity for power and profit. And so I think it's important to understand that, and that and not to kink shame Jerry Falwell Jr. And his wife either, because I'm from Miami, different kind of the South, but the South nonetheless. And they say in Florida, the further north you go, the further south you are. But Miami is that kind of getaway spot for the world, to live your best life. And they did. And I think the problem comes in is when you have this holier than thou hypocrisy with people who are attempting to impose their morals and values on other people, but yet they're off living their best life in Miami.
Yeah, and what I think is how Charlotte is connected in this is because I remember when Jerry Falwell came here for the PTL scandal, only to have a scandal inside his own family in the years ahead, and it's like, whoa, what did we learn from this entire circle here?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about the doc, is that it's not just the story of this kind of bizarre alleged cuckold threesome with a pool boy in Miami Beach. But it is actually the story of this 50-year multi-generational dynasty that had an outsized impact on presidential politics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the thing. I mean, the Falwells, senior and junior alike, were kingmakers. Both anointed at least one president each, the United States, and certainly Falwell Sr. helped to deliver this for the first time ever, this crucial, passionate voting bloc of evangelicals, who helped elect every single Republican president since Ronald Reagan.
The documentary we're talking about is on Hulu. It's called God Forbid, the sex scandal that brought down a dynasty. Granda is, my God, I mean, he had a story. He needed to get the story out. He releases the story. To be in that moment where it starts to flow from him, what was that like? Because all of a sudden, he's confessing. He has something to say.
Yeah, I describe the documentary as like the movie Get Out meets The Righteous Gemstones.
Yep.
And so he gets kind of honey trapped into this world, consenting adult, but a 20-year-old kid putting himself through college by working at the pool at this luxurious resort hotel, the Fontainebleau in Miami Beach, very famous. The Falwells love to take the Liberty University private jet. This is the largest Christian university in the world. They would jet off to the Bahamas, to Miami Beach in this case. They would vacation with their adult children. And one day in the spring of 2012, the way Giancarlo tells it, he's working at the pool, and this cougar, that's how he describes her, is snapping pictures of him, and eventually propositions him after he gets off work to join her in her hotel room. And one catch, though, Giancarlo adds, that Becky said, my husband likes to watch. And so, like, from that moment, which is not really a spoiler, it's in the trailer and very early in the documentary, but you definitely lean forward, and more importantly, we wanted the corroboration. We wanted to see the receipts, so Giancarlo had to provide us copious amounts of material, text messages, photographs, even some pretty revealing videotape footage that is excerpted, at the end of the documentary, to kind of bring it home. But it was a very compelling listen.
Billy, this had to be a shell shocker for you as well. How did you prepare your heart for something like this? Because once you opened up that dam, all of a sudden that water was flowing all over you.
Well, I mean, this is my job as a documentary filmmaker. I mean, whether it's going into prison to interview hitmen who are responsible for the murders of dozens of men, women, and children, or cocaine traffickers, or any litany of celebrities, athletes, or criminals, sometimes all in one, mind you. This is the gig. It's a pretty interesting gig, and there's no better place to do it than Miami in Florida, which is just a never-ending source of characters and stories. I always say that LA is where you go when you want to be somebody. New York is where you go when you are somebody, and Miami is where you go when you want to be somebody else. It's always been a sunny place for shady people.
Modern day journalism. That's why I've always looked at you as being a hero, because you really get in there to get the story, create the water cooler conversation, and all of a sudden then a community is now more aware of what's going on. It's no longer hidden in the paper.
It's very, very flattering. We describe our genre as pop docs because our subjects, our subject matter and style tends to be a little bit more pulpy and pop culture oriented, and we straddle that line between journalism and entertainment, but the obligation is always to the truth. And so on that journey to the truth, though, we feel an obligation to the audience to also create a piece of popular entertainment. So we kind of call it a Trojan horse, where we tempt the audience with the candy, and then we slip in a little broccoli along the way, so that when you're hopefully done, dedicating 2 hours or more of your life to us, you can say I was entertained and I also maybe learned something.
Yep. Well, God forbid, which is on Hulu right now. One of the things, when you're getting that story, you've got to be looking over your shoulder, because I know the Falwell family would have to be no different than Scientology in the way that they've got people that are going to be watching you and they're going to be following you.
Oh yeah, Jerry's standing in the corner right now watching it.
But
Listen.
that takes courage to do what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Again, perhaps it's just coming from a place where I've spent 22 years now as a documentary filmmaker. It's just the job. And I think, and speaking truth to power, I think is part of the job is to not shy away from that. I think it's much more productive, not only for a documentary, but for the outcome or the results of the documentary, i.e. society to punch up, and that's the issue here too, is, not kink shaming anyone, but just saying that if you're going to be a leader and impose your morals and values on other people, you should not be living a life of do as I say, not as I do.
How did Giancarlo, how was he able to handle what happened? Because, he openly admits in the documentary that he says he would not have joined the Falwells if he would have known about the other side of the journey, on what it did to religion.
Yeah, on what it did to him.
Yes. See,
that's his family.
Yeah. See, and that's what you unveil that's the side of the story that we don't get to see, is his side. And that's what's great about God Forbid.
You have to remember, this is a kid who, prior to the first quote unquote pool attendant story running in BuzzFeed in 2018, you Google his name, you get 3 hits: his Twitter, his Instagram, his LinkedIn. That's it. And then after that story, even though he hadn't come forward yet, no one knew the truth. No one knew what happened. It was just enough of an insinuation that the Falwells were involved in this bizarre multi-million-dollar real estate transaction, partnering with a pool boy they met less than a year earlier at a hotel. It was enough to kind of let the Twitterverse and the blogosphere fill in the blanks, and the way he kind of, ruining his life, because then you Google his name and you get hundreds of thousands of results for pool boy, which became a meme. And his sister would actually later liken it to Monica Lewinsky, who, you don't want to be the least powerful person in a scandal, because, your reputation could get destroyed and you could be forever branded as a job you held for 1 year in your youth, the intern, or in this case, the pool boy.
Yeah. Jeez. What did you personally learn from this? Because I know you can do as much prep as you want, but until you experience it, then you start, you're the student of the story.
Yeah, there was a really interesting fact that I was really taken aback by. We spoke to Randall Balmer, an evangelical pastor, theologian, a religious historian, and he talked to us about the origins of evangelical political power, because this is in part a story about Jerry Falwell Jr. being the first evangelical leader to endorse Donald Trump, a very unlikely candidate in the 2016 Republican primaries, particularly with Ted Cruz, who himself was devout. His father is a pastor. He thought he was a shoo-in for that endorsement, and it's very possible that Jerry Falwell Jr., like his father before him, helped to elect a president of the United States and deliver this very powerful voting bloc. But I think that what was particularly surreal about this is that conventional wisdom is evangelical political power was born out of Roe v. Wade. But it turns out that it wasn't for 5 years after that decision that Jerry Falwell Sr. and some political operatives basically market tested and chose that issue to impassion their base, because prior to that it was really just a Catholic issue. They hadn't spoken out, evangelicals, uniformly against Roe v. Wade. In fact, there was some dissension that their small government conservative values actually led them to the conclusion that the government should have no place in that decision, that it was between a woman, her doctor, her faith, and her family. And so it was interesting to see the cynicism of that decision making. It wasn't about pro-life; it was about pro-power, and to see that 50-year experiment effectively succeed because of Jerry Falwell Jr. of all people, the one who fell from grace, is a really compelling story.
See, when this story first broke, of course, it started out as a rumor. And nobody really wanted to believe it and things like that. But I just thought it was a political move that somebody was just trying to silence the religious world and stuff like that, people with power. But then as the story continued to grow, it was like, oh my God! And now you've given us that opportunity to even get more into the oh my God.
Yeah, and somebody who Giancarlo felt bad for, as do I, is the Liberty University community. The campus community, because there are a lot of true believers there, people who not only believe the Gospels but believe in the mission of that institution. Parents who sent their kids there and entrusted their kids with the leaders of that institution. And there's clearly call it a disconnect between those people and the leadership at the university under Jerry Falwell. And they really turned out to be victims and collateral damage in all of this. And I've heard from quite a few of them, one of whom we interview in the documentary Dustin Wall, who have been trying to save the soul of liberty, and save it from, they say Jerry Falwell Jr. Because they believe in what liberty, could be and should be. And yet here they are, with as they put it, the embarrassment of their college being involved in this. They say the diminished quality of their education there, the diminished value of their diploma from there, and it's those people that I really feel for.
The name of the documentary is God Forbid. It's on Hulu. I know that you're a very busy man. Can you talk about your next project and what we should be looking forward to?
Yeah, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're doing a fifth Cocaine Cowboys documentary. We went from Cocaine Cowboys to Cuckold Cowboys and back to Cocaine Cowboys again. So we are this one's called The Last of the Cocaine Cowboys, and it is a bit of a mic drop on this subject for us, because we've always told kind of Miami-centric stories about the cocaine trade and how narco dollars really built the foundation of the modern city of Miami. And this one, we have access to Carlos Lader, who, if you're not familiar with the narcos world, is one of only 4 founding members of the Medellin cartel. And he served 34 years in prison in the United States. It's the first time he's ever talked about this. We have a very days-long interviews with him. And it's like getting access to Al Capone to talk to you about the Prohibition era. Only Carlos is talking to us about the total corruption of the Western Hemisphere because of the cocaine trade and then the war on drugs reacting to it. And so it's not just about Miami. It is about it is about Colombia and the Bahamas and Cuba and Panama and Nicaragua and Mexico and the United States. So it's just an absolutely epic and fascinating story right from the horse's mouth. It's like it's like having Pablo Escobar. It's incredible.
Well, you have been so connected to that story for so long. It's like when they see you get off an airplane, I know they got to be going, "Oh crap, he's here. Oh no, oh Billy's going to be talking."
Yeah, Al, my producing partner Alfred Spellman likes to joke that when people get out of prison in Florida, their first call is to their mother, and their second call is to us to make a documentary about them. And interestingly enough, that's kind of what happened here. Giancarlo reached out to us via email in the summer of 2020, and that's how this happened. It wasn't our pursuing him, but him reaching out to us.
Well, was it an instant yes, or is that one of those where you go back to the team and say, do you guys want to even touch this one? Or is it one of those where it's like, oh, no, this is it. This fell into our lap.
If you'll pardon the expression, it was an instant hell yes, is what it was, Arrow. Because listen, this is funny, but the real estate, the property in question, that really the dispute over which is what led us here, because without that litigation, we never would have learned about any of this. That property is 8 blocks away from our office in Miami Beach.
Oh my
God.
I
bought gin and whiskey in that liquor store. That was a tenant of the Falwells for years there, and I pass it twice a day in my commute. And so we had been tracking this story since the news first broke in about 2017 that the Falwells had owned this property. And then in the summer of 2020, when I get an email subject pool boy, I actually didn't even need to get to the subject pool boy. I saw the name Giancarlo Granda. I instantly knew who it was, and I reached out.
Wow. I'm so proud of what you do. I really am. And I look forward to talking to you many more times in the future, Billy.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. Anytime, Arrow.
You bet. You be brilliant today, okay?
You too. Thanks.